Modern agriculture did not forget this crop because it failed. It forgot it because it would not. For centuries, it fed villages that never wrote their names into empire. It rose in thin soils where irrigation never reached. It survived drought that split the earth into plates. It asked for little. It returned much. It was documented in the courts of ancient Persia, recorded in ink, counted among grains fit for tribute and for bread. And then, sometime after 1940, it slipped quietly from seed catalogs. Not because it was poisonous, not because it was weak, but because it did not belong to a system that required dependence. What cannot be patented cannot be protected. What cannot be standardized cannot be scaled. What cannot be owned is eventually erased. This archive exists for things like this, not for nostalgia, not for romance, but for memory. Here at Ancient Food Files, we open old ledgers, we examine forgotten harvest reports, we read marginal notes and field journals, we preserve what modern systems no longer find convenient to remember. If you value this kind of recovery, remain here with us. Subscribe not for growth, but for preservation. Each record kept is one less silence. Tonight, we open a file marked with dust and ink. Camelina. Known to botanists as Camelina sativa, known in older Persian agricultural texts as a hardy oil seed of the uplands, known in parts of Anatolia and the Caucasus by names that translate loosely to gold of the poor soil. It was never glamorous. It did not command the ceremony of wheat or the reverence of barley. It grew in the margins, in rotation fields, in the wake of harsher grains. Its origin stretches back to the region once held by the Achaemenid Empire, across what is now Iran, eastern Turkey, and into the highlands near the Caucasus Mountains. Archaeological evidence places its cultivation at least 3,000 years ago. Seeds have been found in storage pits near ancient settlements, preserved in clay-lined chambers meant to outlast raids and winters alike. In Zoroastrian agrarian texts, oil seeds were not merely crops, they were guardians of flame. Oil fed lamps, lamps sustained ritual, ritual sustained order. Camelina oil burned clean. Oral traditions from Kurdish highland communities describe a plant that does not argue with the wind. It bends low, its stems are slender, branching near the top, crowned with small, pale yellow flowers. When mature, it forms pear-shaped seed pods, each holding a handful of tiny amber seeds. The seeds are no larger than sesame, but denser. When crushed, they release an oil with a faint scent of grass and almonds. It was a crop of edges. It thrived where wheat thinned and where flax faltered. It tolerated cold springs and dry summers. It matured quickly, often within 90 days. Farmers valued it not because it yielded extravagantly, but because it yielded reliably. That distinction matters. Biologically, Camelina is a quiet engineer. It belongs to the Brassicaceae family, related to mustard and cabbage, yet unlike many of its relatives, it evolved tolerance to nutrient-poor soils. Its root system is fibrous and modest, but efficient. It scavenges residual nitrogen left behind by previous crops. It asks for little additional fertility. In crop rotations, it functioned as a cleanser. It interrupted pest cycles. It suppressed weeds by establishing early canopy. It matured before many invasive species could compete. Its seeds contain high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly alpha-linolenic acid. In traditional diets of the region, this oil balanced grain-heavy meals. It was pressed with simple wooden devices, no elaborate infrastructure required. Its resilience extended beyond the field. Camelina seeds store well. Their oil is naturally stable due to high antioxidant content, including tocopherols. In an age before refrigeration, this mattered. In times of war, when supply lines fractured and granaries burned, a small sack of camelina could mean light, lubrication, and calories. Historical records from the Parthian and later Sasanian periods mention oilseed levaes collected alongside barley. Though less prestigious, they were dependable. During the early centuries of Islamic expansion, agricultural manuals translated into Arabic preserved instructions for its sowing. It was not the centerpiece, it was the safeguard. In medieval Europe, it traveled north through trade and migration. By the 10th century, camelina was cultivated in parts of what is now Germany and France. There, it earned another name, false flax. Not because it deceived, but because it resembled a crop that required more from the soil. In the harsh winters of the Little Ice Age, camelina endured where other oilseeds failed. Monastic records from the 14th century describe emergency plantings after rye harvests were lost to frost. Camelina's short season allowed a second chance before winter sealed the ground. Then came the 19th century. Industrial oil extraction expanded, railways extended, uniformity became profitable. Larger seeded oil crops like rapeseed and later soybean offered economies of scale. They responded dramatically to fertilizers. They yielded heavily under mechanization. Camelina did not respond the same way. Its modest stature made mechanical harvesting difficult in early industrial systems. Its small seeds required careful calibration. It did not produce the dramatic tonnage per acre that new markets demanded. By the early 20th century, agricultural bulletins began describing it as obsolete. After 1940, it largely vanished from commercial seed catalogs in North America and much of Europe. Not outlawed, not condemned, simply omitted. The era following the Second World War was defined by consolidation. Farms grew larger, inputs increased. Seed lines were standardized for predictability and maximum yield under chemical fertilization. Camelina was unmanageable within this framework. It thrived without fertilizers, which made it economically inconvenient in a system built around selling them. It fit small rotations and marginal land, not monocultures. It was unownable in another sense. For centuries, farmers saved their own seed. Camelina did not require hybridization to remain vigorous. Its genetics were stable. It did not degrade rapidly across generations. In a marketplace shifting toward proprietary seed and contractual agriculture, this independence was a liability. No villain needed to conspire. The logic of scale was sufficient. What could not be maximized was minimized. Yet knowledge rarely disappears entirely. In the late 20th century, agronomists began re-examining forgotten crops in the face of soil degradation and energy crises. The oil shocks of the 1970s renewed interest in alternative oilseeds. Camelina re-entered research stations quietly. Studies in Canada documented its tolerance to semi-arid prairie conditions. It required significantly less water than canola. It matured earlier, escaping late-season drought. In university trials across United States' northern plains, researchers observed its low nitrogen requirement. Fields planted after wheat needed minimal additional fertilizer. Modern nutritional analysis confirmed what ancient diets had already practiced. Camelina oil contains a favorable omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. It possesses natural antioxidants that extend shelf life without hydrogenation. Ecologists noted another feature. Camelina flowers provide early-season forage for pollinators. In simplified agricultural landscapes where floral diversity has declined, this brief bloom offers sustenance during critical weeks. Soil scientists found that its shallow yet dense root network reduces erosion. In rotation, it leaves behind organic matter that improves structure. None of this was revolutionary, it was confirmation. The plant had always done these things, we had simply measured them. There is another layer to its disappearance. In many regions, foods associated with hardship become symbols of it. In rural Anatolia during the economic strains of the early 20th century, camelina oil was the oil of necessity. It replaced more expensive imports. It flavored coarse bread when olive oil was scarce. As prosperity increased and global trade widened, preferences shifted. Refined oils became markers of modernity, pale, neutral, industrial. Camelina tasted distinct, earthy, slightly bitter. To younger generations, it evoked rationing and austerity. The very resilience that had preserved families through lean years now carried the memory of those years. Cultural forgetting followed economic change. By mid-century, fields once flecked with yellow in spring stood uniform with new cultivars. Seed saving declined, knowledge of planting windows narrowed to textbooks. Memory thinned. Today, we stand in another transition. Soils across continents show signs of exhaustion. Input costs rise. Climate patterns grow erratic. Rains arrive late or not at all. Heat lingers. Large-scale systems built on predictability strain under volatility. In this context, camelina appears not as nostalgia, but as preparedness. It tolerates drought, it thrives in cold, it matures quickly, fitting into shortened seasons, it offers oil without heavy chemical dependence. Its reintroduction in some regions has been modest, a few thousand acres here, experimental plots there. It does not dominate headlines. It persists. There is quiet strength in that. The deeper lesson may not be about one plant. It may be about criteria. We selected crops for yield under ideal conditions. We optimized for transport, storage, and processing at industrial scale. We prioritized uniformity. In doing so, we narrowed resilience. Camelina was not incompatible with agriculture. It was incompatible with a particular vision of agriculture, a vision that equated control with success. But resilience often resists control. It spreads risk, it tolerates imperfection, it bends. In ancient Persian fields, farmers did not measure quarterly output, they measured survival across seasons. They planted what would answer drought, what would answer cold, what would answer war. Camelina answered quietly. It did not demand irrigation canals, it did not demand imported fertility, it did not demand annual purchase. It asked only for soil and time. When we removed it from catalogs after 1940, we did not erase its capacity, we erased our attention. Seeds remained in gene banks, in forgotten envelopes, in the corners of rural sheds. They waited. Nature does not require permission to persist, it requires opportunity. As climate uncertainty deepens, opportunity shifts. Fields once considered marginal expand. Water grows scarce in places long accustomed to abundance. Farmers search again for crops that do not argue with the wind. Camelina stands ready, not as a miracle, not as salvation, but as memory. A record that ancient systems were not naive, they were calibrated by necessity. They selected for durability because collapse was never theoretical. We are relearning what they practiced. If you walk through a field of camelina in early bloom, you might overlook it. The flowers are small, the stems unassuming. It does not command awe. But beneath that modest canopy lies an architecture shaped by centuries of selection under stress, an architecture that does not shatter easily. The knowledge of it was never truly lost. It was archived in seeds and in soil, in academic papers, in regional dishes remembered by elders. Ignored knowledge is not empty, it is patient. This archive exists to reopen such files, to read margins, to trace absences, to ask why certain strengths became inconvenient. If this record matters to you, remain here with us. Subscribe to Ancient Food Files not for novelty, but for continuity. Each preserved story strengthens the archive. Camelina will continue with or without our acknowledgement. It has already survived empires, climates, and economies. The soil keeps its own memory, and in time, what endures quietly often returns, not because it was rediscovered, but because it was always there.